that old-time religion, amen. That old-time religion, amen. Give me that old, give me that old, give me that old-time religion, amen.
Greetings everyone, and welcome to another episode of Christianity and Me. Now, in this episode we'll be talking about the battle for the flock. So, this, for those of you outside of conservative Christian communities, you might not really be familiar with this. Now, there's such a term as doctrine cops, which we might not know. And this term relates to people who always usually have to correct other people regarding doctrines. You know, they're the people going around telling you, like, well, you believe this thing is wrong and this makes me question your salvation. Now you should do what I tell you because I'm right and I have the right interpretation or knowledge regarding this doctrine. It's basically really just Christian infighting, and it's similar to an intra-party struggle over the leadership of a party. Now, the biggest issue that's at hand, that's being debated right now within the Christian community, conservative Christian community, is the issue of lordship salvation. And this started up in the early 1990s or mid-1990s between John MacArthur and preachers like Zane Hodges, for example, who took different views of this. Now, this term is nowhere mentioned in the Bible, of course, but it could be implied. But it involves an important issue, which is, how do you define what salvation really means? Is salvation just the acknowledgement and the acceptance of Jesus, or do you have to take steps to, not works, but certain steps to show that Jesus is really Lord of your life? So this is a very amorphous distinction, and it's very ambiguous and vague, and which is why it's not in the Bible, and which is why both sides are digging in, because they really have the same amount of ammunition on this, but neither side can be really considered, at least at this point, to be heretical or outside the mainstream. And the way I see it the same as a political campaign. We see broadsides, but they're done through books, funded by the sheeple, of course. And in reality, it's nothing but a struggle for who will control the direction of evangelical doctrines for the next decade. And until a consensus develops, these book wars will continue to exist. But once a consensus and one of the sides wins out, is lordship salvation required or not? Once that is reached, the minority position will really become sidelined and eventually be declared heretical, delegitimized, and will lose power and so on. Now, we really see a lot of parallels to history. If you learn anything from history, is that history does tend to repeat itself. Not because history is circular, but because man is still man. And there's nothing really new under the sun, as Solomon said. Now, and I'll just give you the example of Arian Christianity and Roman Christianity. Arian Christianity was just fine when the Ostrogoths protected Rome and, they ensured its stability against various invasions. But once the Romans regained their strength, one of their first things they did was, well, we can't hang out with you Arian Christians anymore because you're heretics. So they sought to delegitimize their status and subvert their position of power until they, like all Arian Christians, eventually became a relic of history. Now, my complaint isn't that this is happening, even though Jesus is clear in his prayer in Gethsemane that he wishes his believers remained united. And I ask myself, why wasn't his prayer answered? Maybe we didn't have enough faith? I don't know. But that's not a snide remark. It's a question. And, instead of waging this communal civil war over who gets to lead the flocks, why doesn't the church seek to fulfill its express mission? To preach the gospel, to feed the poor, to care for the widow and the orphan. Now, I have a theory on this, and maybe it's wacky, but this is my theory. Maybe it's because power is just a little too enticing. pastoral supremacy brings not only prestige and influence, but pays well, really, as well. I mean, just look at the houses, the cars, the jewels, and everything else that evangelists wear. I mean, they're just following after Jesus, right? Of course.